Hey everybody, this is PJ Reilly from Lancaster Archery. Got a special format video today. We are here talking with Kyle Davidson from DCA Custom Arrows. And in front of me, I have the new Super Sabre Vanes, but we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's start off with, hey Kyle, how you doing?
Doing great, man. I really appreciate having me on. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely. Kyle, so DCA Custom Arrows, let's start there. Tell us about that and about how you got into the vanes. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a mechanical engineer in my day job, and one of my friends, DJ Eads, had gotten me into archery. We worked on the same project at my day job, and he kind of was, hey, you ought to check this out. At the time, I was shooting pistols and rifles, and kind of not getting bored with it, but kind of reached the maximum I could on that with accuracy and all that kind of stuff. So he was like, you should try a bow, and da-da-da-da. I did, and obviously was hooked right away. And then once I started shooting and started getting more repetitive with my shooting, more consistent with my shooting, my groups weren't where I thought they should be, compared to everything I've seen online and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a mechanical engineer is what I do, but I've been working in research and development for 20 or plus years. And so I have like 30 roughly patents to my name in that process. And so I started just kind of going through archery and tuning arrows like I do any of my day job. Like my day job, they bring in a napkin sketch and they say, make one of these. And so a lot of times what we're doing is brand new. So I have to do a lot of research and figure out, what works, what doesn't work, and what's not true, what is true. So I did that same thing for archery and for arrows in particular, and started just shooting and shooting and shooting, playing with different setups, trying different things. But, something that I learned in research and development is controlling variables and keeping everything consistent. So changing one variable, limiting that variable, and making sure you're getting repetitive results, which is tough to do in archery because everything's a variable, but you limit it as much as you can. And then start getting good groups with it, start getting better and seeing what I was doing. And I was like, oh, this does that and that does this. And talked to him, and then he was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I was talking about spine stiffness and point weight. And, like most archers, most hunters, especially, he goes into the store, he said, I need new arrows. They give him new arrows, and he goes and he shoots them. And I was talking to him about different things, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but can you make me a set? And I was like, yeah, I can make a set. And then he had a friend that wanted a set, and then it turned out they were outfitters in Illinois. And so they all wanted a set of them, and then their customers wanted a set, and then that became something else. And I was like, well, maybe I can at least pay enough or get enough doing this to be able to do more experiments and find more things out. Yeah. And so lo and behold, here I am, and I've done, I don't know how many sets I've honestly done, but it's close to 1,000 by now, and done sets for professional athletes and big name hunters and all that kind of stuff. But it's all just in good fun to try to be able to figure this sport out. An arrow is an extremely complicated piece of equipment from the aerodynamic standpoint, from the mechanical standpoint. And with the Super Sabre Vanes, that's something that I've really dove into as far as the aerodynamics are concerned. I build arrows for Donnie Vincent, and something that he had talked about was arrow noise and vane noise in particular. And I never thought that a vane being noisy was super critical. But then when he kind of planted that in my ear, I was like, I wonder if I can make one that's super stable and super quiet, because until now you had to make a decision. It was either going to be a quiet vane or a stable vane. And when I talk about stability and I talk about any of the other numbers that I do, everything is math based. And so I don't say an arrow is stable because of this or that. I have the numbers to prove how stable it is. I actually use a program that they use to design rockets and formulas they use to design rockets to design my vanes and actually calculate the stability of the arrow. So I would go through and design the vane based on those calculations, and then also ran computational fluid dynamics, or like the simulated wind tunnel on your computer, to optimize the flow around the arrow. And then once I found a shape that was quiet, I actually went back through and tuned it specifically for broadheads and again for an arrow. But yeah, so that's a quick summary to how I got to the vanes.
Yeah, tell us about that shape, because that is unique. Yes, but that's for a reason.
Yes. So what I was doing, I had the opportunity to have blanks of vanes, and I would go through and just literally design them on my computer, print out a little on my printer that's right there, print out a little paper, cut it out, tape it onto the side of that, cut it out with scissors, and then go shoot it. And I had no intentions of really selling these. It was more just finding out. And that's honestly what I like to do, is just find things out and do research and try to get the answer to this question. And so I would go through, I'd print all these out. And in one of my other previous jobs, I worked on a team that did starters and alternators. And so we made fans for those starters and alternators as well. And I was like, I could do this, thinking this would be an easy process. I was like, I can do this. I can go out. I know how to do quiet vanes for fans. I designed that one and shot it. I would shoot them past my phone. So I would have a target at 100 yards. I would put my phone at 70. I would aim directly at my phone, and then it would go over my phone to the target.
Yeah.
And that's how I would kind of get an idea of the noise. And the first one that I knew what I was doing was the loudest vane I'd ever shot. So based off of everything that I'd done, I was just like, I knew what I was doing, and I was like, oh, now it's on. So now I just had to find an answer, because I thought I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And so the shape just evolved. I would have an idea. I would have a principle, an aerodynamic principle. I would try it. It would be loud. I'd mess with the front. I'd mess with the back. I'd mess with the height. I'd mess with the, everything that I could imagine. And the way that I came up with that shape, like I watch a lot more videos on physics and aerodynamics, and like I love Formula One, the new cars that are out now, just eating all that up. But that's mainly my passion.
Yeah.
And so I was watching a film on the F-100 Super Sabre, which is a plane kind of back from the 60s. And on the fin of it, on the back of it, it had that shape.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I had my Jeep loaded up. I had everything ready to go, had my shoes on, was watching the video, and I was like, I'll try that. And so I just cut one out, fletched it up, got in the Jeep, went out, shot it. And, I was hearing the noise as they would go past, and I would shoot like a Max Hunter is the one that I've been using on my custom builds for a long time. And then a Max Stealth was the quietest that I had shot. But I knew based on my program that one was more quiet than the other one, and one was more stable than the other one. And so, again, I shot this one, and I would come back, put on my giant headphones, listen to my video, and I would hear the sizzle as they would go past.
Yeah.
And then the Max Stealth has this as it goes past. And so shot all my vanes and all that stuff. This was one of the ones that I had shot, the first prototype of it. I'd shot that one, and it was super quiet. And I was like, I had my headphones on, I'm just listening, same noise. And that one was very quiet. And I was like, what was that? And then, so that shape, the reason it's that shape is very specific. It has a lot of like predefined aerodynamic principles of why that works. But what I did was then take that shape, again, went back into the stability program, looked at it on an arrow with the stability program, optimized the back of it for that stability, and then went into the CFD, ran the fluid, computational fluid dynamics with it to see how the air was traveling around it, put a broadhead on the front of that, ran it, the same thing, and optimized that shape for specifically archery. And it changed it a little bit, but not only that, but I did shooting past my phone with the sound, and then the programs to figure out the stability. I have a lab radar, so that allows you to shoot out to 100 yards and get 200 points of data or so all the way out to 100 yards, and then graph that so I could compare vanes that way. And then I also built a wind tunnel, so I can put any arrow that I want to in there and run it at about 190 feet per second, and I can actually get data as far as like RPM and some other things on it. So I would compare one vane to the next vane to the next vane to the next vane, and then I did that for probably a year and a half, just getting to that shape, optimizing that shape. And then the last year was basically working with the molder to get the exact material and all the testing and everything like that I wanted.
So what do you see? So when I look at the vane, and we just did a video on it, it's very flexible side to side, but vertically it's pretty stiff. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pushing down on it with a fair amount of force and it's not bending.
Right.
But side to side, it's soft, it's flexible. I mean, that's great for fletching it. But I'm guessing, again, was by design.
Yeah. So the way it's actually done, the bottom is thicker than the top. So it's relative to a lot of other vanes, it's pretty stiff. It's just at the very tip, it's a little more flexible. But the reason I did that is so as you bend the vane, it doesn't bend in one place. It bends over the entire length of it. And that helps with like the vane not sticking. So if you have a constant thickness and you bend it over, all that force is focused at the corner. But with mine, because it's tapered, that force is spread out. And so the whole thing will turn like that instead of just going right to one point.
Okay.
That allows it to retain some of its stiffness as well.
Huh. Okay.
Yep.
And then as well, I was reading some of your explanations on the back about
Yes.
the center of gravity and center of pressure. Now I can
Yes.
tell you, I've been, doing videos on arrows and vanes for however long I've been here. Your packaging is the first where I've heard anyone talk about center of gravity and center of pressure. And I'll let
Yes.
you explain how that relates.
Sure, no problem. So the way that I have my little example error here, but the way it works is everybody knows where the center of gravity is. It's where all the weight of the arrow is kind of focused into one point.
Right.
And where your center of gravity is where everything rotates. So if you flip a hammer up in the air, it will flip by the head of the hammer. And so it'll flip, the handle moves more than the head. That's because it's rotating about its center of gravity. So as an arrow is shot, it rotates about that center of gravity. So when you shoot it off a little bit, it's kind of all moving around that center of gravity. The center of pressure is a little bit more to explain, but the way it works is if you shot an arrow perfectly, 90 degrees to how it's supposed to be flying, all the air is going to hit the side of the arrow, and what's going to turn it is that air. So we all know it'll turn like this, kind of like a weather vane does. All that air hitting, you can sum all that pressure up into one point, and that's your center of pressure. So where your center of pressure is versus where your center of gravity is, that's kind of a moment arm for that stability. And when you put like a broadhead on the front of it, then you're basically adding vanes to the front of your arrow, and having that center of gravity as far back as you can on an arrow is important. So that's why, like on mine, there's a lot of area in the back of it. And the reason for that is because moving all that area to the back moves that center of gravity or the center of pressure back further. And it's very specific on mine. The reason that it's kind of got a big shape in the back is mainly for aerodynamics, but also that center to move that center of pressure back.
And so then I believe your explanation is that then goes towards some forgiveness.
Yes. Yeah. So if you shoot your arrow out and it's kind of moving around, that having that longer moment arm will correct it, especially when you have that broadhead on. And you can run any broadhead with it, but somebody else show one that's a giant dinner plate. But in reason, these will stabilize as good technically on, like, down to the math. They're actually technically better than Blazer or Max Hunter or something like that. But you won't see it in practical use. But it is just as stable and scary quiet. Actually, I finally got to go back to my public range, and I shot with a guy that I've known for a long time. I haven't seen him in like a year because I've been doing the development of these, and I've been working on the dialed archery site and things like that I couldn't take to a public range.
Right.
So I shot him, and he was just talking to me as I shot, and he just turned around and he looked, and he was like, "What was that?" And I was like, "That's the new Vane, man." He's like, he hears vanes all the time. He's there all day, every day. And it was the quietest thing he'd ever heard. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, these work differently too than a regular vane. So most vanes use low pressure. Everybody, or you should put a helical on your vanes. And when you do that, you create different pressures on the sides of the vanes. And so on one side you get high pressure, on the other side you get low pressure. And a lot of vanes just use those high and low pressures to get the rotation of the vane. Mine actually uses the air that comes around the front of it. The reason it's quiet, the air comes around the front and then kind of goes up the back of it like this. It gets cut off here, it slides up the back like that. And then the only low pressure that I use is up here at the top. and that's for the rotation. And it's further from the axis, so it has more of a moment to be able to do that. Think of a wrench and you're getting more leverage on it. This gives the low pressure more leverage, and it creates less of a low pressure on this side. And when something's flying, if it has different low pressures around it, it's a little more inconsistent. So these are actually more consistent than regular vanes. The other thing is the surface area. So the surface area of this is actually less than a blazer. So in a crosswind, you won't have as much drift related to the vanes.
Right. How do you get this message out? I'm hearing all this and it's like, wow, I mean, I'm looking at a vane, this little tiny thing here, and just hearing the amount of engineering that goes into that, I'm guessing other companies have done this, maybe not to this level. I have no idea, but it sounds like the challenge for you is to get that message out there about it.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
It's tough, but I mean, like on all my custom builds and everything I do, it's all math based. So when somebody contacts me to build custom arrows for them, I go through, I have a formulas and everything that I use, other programs I use to get everything just right. And so my brand is built on that message that, if I give you an opinion, it's not. It has numbers behind it. I tell people, I'm like, I can't be a con man because I've horrible self-confidence. So I have to have things to back up what I'm saying. And in my day job, I can't go into a meeting as a mechanical engineer in research and development and say, I really like this one. They would say, show me something. We have millions of dollars writing on this thing. So if it fails, you're done.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that know who I am and know what I do and I built arrows for, and they follow, other people that I build arrows for, they know kind of my brand. And that's where all this came from, honestly. But for like the average consumer, that's why like on the back of my sheet here, I have, it shows the air flowing around it. And it shows, like you said, it gives you kind of an explanation of what's going on with it. And then at the bottom, I have the information. But I talk to a lot of my friends that are in the archery community and talk to people like Donnie Vincent. And I said, read this, make sure, because I'm not even exaggerating. I could talk for 4 hours about vanes.
I believe it.
Very easily. But I was like, I'm trying to keep it not wordy. I'm trying to, I don't want people to have a rocket science degree in order to understand this. And I know people just want to go shoot arrows and they want to go hunt. So I was like, what should I do? And they were like, just be yourself, just write what you want and it'll take care of itself, and I do. This is actually the very dumbed down version of, not dumbed down, but summarized version of what I do. So, just doing it that way. And then, doing podcasts like this or product examples like this. And again, just kind of letting people tell each other is how it works. I don't think that there's a lot of companies that do this because, and I've had other people ask me, why don't other archery companies and vane companies do this? I don't know how they come up with their designs, but to hire an aerodynamicist and a mechanical engineer and all this stuff and spend 1.5 years developing it, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that I would wake up at night, come downstairs and write things down and then go back upstairs. That's true. You could ask my wife, but it's just a passion for me, obsession.
I mean, there's obviously a lot of technical that goes into this vane, but then from the simple side, it is flexible, it is durable, and it is easy to get to stick on an arrow. I mean, but all the high level stuff aside, it does the most basic things of a vane, which we all know that one of the easiest ways for somebody to stop using a vane is if it's a pain to work with, if they can't get it to stick, whatever. And this one does that. Helical, offset, whatever. I mean, you can get radical with the helical with these because it's flexible enough and it's going to hold that shape and stick.
It's so a lot of companies, they either go with a stiff material to make a stiff vane or they go with a soft material. But the big trend right now is going to stiffer. I think what they're trying to avoid is the fluttering of the vanes.
Right.
And like I said, I can run them at 190 feet per second in my garage and I can see it spin and I can hold the arrow and I can watch 190 feet per second hit the air, and I've never seen one flutter. of any vane. But the stiffness for me is durability and, being able to set them on your table and then pick them back up and they're still in the right spot, that kind of stuff. The material is funny because with the molder, I worked with him. The first material that we had selected was kind of a material that he'd ran, and it was just, hey, I got this material, it should be good, let's try it. Took it outside, it turned brown within like 3 hours. So I was like, no, can't use that one. And then we started looking at other materials. I had ideas, but again, I wasn't sure if I was going to even make these or not. So because of my connections with my day job, I talked to a few people in the materials industry, and then they were like, the hunting community's awesome, and the archery community's, I'd say, even better. But one of the guys that I knew was like, oh, you should talk to this guy because he's a hunter and he's also in it. He knows more than I do about this. And then that guy was like, that's awesome. You should talk to our director of this and that. He's a hunter and he has more exposure than I do.
Yeah.
And so I talked to that guy, and then they were like, oh, this is awesome. And I'm talking to him and I'm like, all right, it's got to do this. It's got to do this. It's got to do this. It's got to do that. I was like, this is the material I was looking at. And he was like, that's perfect. And he's like, I would absolutely use that. And then he goes, he's like, do you know anybody at Loctite? And I was like, I don't. And he said, I got a buddy in California that is like the director of da-da-da-da for Loctite. Talk to him. He'll tell you what material, what glue to use, and it was just hunter to hunter to hunter to archery hunters, and it was like just a big community. So
that's amazing.
They still message me and ask me how it's going and, if anything's changed. So the glue that I recommend using is Loctite 401, and that's it's not because I have a friend at Loctite now. It's just the best glue that I found. If you use the 401, you don't need a primer pin with it, which is a big thing with a lot of my friends. I like the Max Hunters. I like the Max Stealths. The AAE makes a great vane. There's no joke about it. But the primer pin is what would turn people off to it. So I was like, well, I have to make these so you don't need a primer pin. And with the 401, you don't need to, but you can use a primer pin. With the primer pin, you can use just about any glue that you want to.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I found out that are super into the technical details and want the best performing products, they do everything. So they have their, primer pins, they have their assortment of glues, and they're willing to spend the time to enjoy the fletching process. But they are a nice flexible vane, so you could put like you said, a wicked helical on them.
Yeah. Also,
because I fletched so many of these, I know what I like in a vane. So I like that cup to be fairly tight, and I like it to be fairly wide. Glue works on square inch, so pounds per square inch is the pull force of it. So giving a bigger foot is a good thing for vane adhesion. And aerodynamically, it's actually better. And it honestly doesn't really matter. Looking at the aerodynamics of it, I can kind of prove why it doesn't matter, but it is good for strength. And then having the thicker area at the bottom helps with that, making it a stiff vane, but not a stiff material.
Loctite 401, is that a cyanoacrylate still, or is that?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, but you can only get it, you can't get it at like Lowe's or anything like that. You need to get it off Amazon, but you could get it. There's some stuff that's out there that's has Mandarin writing on it. You can use that, and it works just fine. I looked at getting 401, like little tubes of it to ship with it, because I kind of like the idea of just having everything you need. But it was just, I had to buy the little tubes for more expensive than I could get them off Amazon. So I was like, I'll just tell people. But like in the package, I include little alcohol prep pads to be able to wipe the base of the vane, because these are all molded individually. These aren't molded on a punch, kind of the way most of them are. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the molding them individually allowed me to round the corners of it a little bit, which helps a little bit. I also got my logo kind of molded in there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And a lot of times my friends that are shooting them now and shot them last season send me pictures. And so I get pictures where the blood actually captures in that.
Oh, yeah, it would.
Little red stamp on there.
So, and now let's talk about, since you launched these, is it even a month ago? It's within the last month, I know that.
Yeah.
When we did our video announcing them, but reception's been crazy. Tell us, give us that number, what you were saying of what you can do and what the demand was and how fast you sold out.
Yeah, so the first time I did it, everybody's known about these for a while, but nobody had seen the profile because I thought I was going to have them out sooner than I did. It was just with COVID and accessibility to materials and, the metal to make the molds and all that kind of stuff. It took a little longer than I wanted to, but, to nobody's fault, just the way it was.
Right.
But yeah, I told the molder that I'd probably need about 3,000 a year, thinking that would be enough. And I got the first order in, I told everybody they were for sale, and I sold out in 26 minutes. So I was like, oh no, and so I was like, get me more. As soon as you get me more, get me more. And the molder's awesome, and they're hunters as well. And they're like, we're running them as fast as we can. And so they were running them. I was getting them. I got more in. I sold those out in it was like a half hour again. And then got more in, and I've gone through, 12,000 plus vanes, and they've been in stock on my website for like 2 hours. So
I know they don't last long here in our inventory. I see them when they come in. I grabbed these. I think there's 2 packs out there. I grabbed one to come in here to do this, but they just don't last long. They're flying out there.
Yeah, it's been, like I said, everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it is a good thing, but I feel like a jerk for not having more available, just because I'm not trying to artificially, drive this that way. I want to get more, but it's just the way things are right now. We are looking to increase, like I said, it's an individually molded vane. So we are looking to increase the number of cavities on that mold, which will double the amount that I can make. And that'll be a little bit more manageable for, all the demand that's out there right now. And hopefully it continues. But the feedback that I've got has been insane. I mean, like, I shot them, I loved them. But, when you do something, you're kind of like, oh, these are really good. I really like them. Let's see. But, will anybody else like something that I like it because I spent 2 years developing it.
Sure.
And then, with the development process and then the molding process was a total of about 2 years. And so I sent them out to people like the DIY Sportsman and to AJ from Knights of the Apex and all those guys. These are people that I trust, and I trust to give me feedback. They're my good friends, and they're not the people that are going to give you the polished version of what you want to hear. They almost enjoy telling me something's wrong, and that's what I want. They're my good friends.
Yeah.
And I talked to them, and they were just like, especially the DIY Sportsman, he's an engineer as well. And he's like, dude, they're awesome. And I was like, what's wrong with it? Tell me everything wrong with it. And he said, there's nothing wrong with it. And I said, think I should sell them? And he's like, yes, you should sell these. And so I was like, all right. Because like I said, from those guys, I would hear good feedback. And I've had, so in my DCA Custom Arrows side of the business, I have 2 guys that fletch for me right now. I do all the math. I cut the arrows, I square the arrows, I spine the arrows. I do all that kind of stuff, and then give them to them. I've shown them how to wrap, and then they fletch. I get them in, I weigh every single arrow. I check, to make sure the adhesion of the vanes are good. I kind of check them, and I weigh them. I think I mentioned that, but so those guys have been shooting for a long time. They're awesome. Knights of the Apex used to shoot 4 vane and try to a 4 fletch to try to get a broadhead to stabilize with it. And I told him, I was like, you only need 3 with these. And he's like, all right. And he did. And he's like, these are awesome. I don't need a 4 fletch anymore. And people always ask me, do I need a 4 fletch? Can I 4 fletch? And I'm like, I'm the one selling you the vanes. If you 4 fletch, you buy more vanes from me.
That's another one. Yeah.
I'm telling you, you only need 3. It's like I run the numbers. There's more drag involved in 4 fletch. You don't need it. The stability, the numbers that I ran using, calculations are fine for a 3 fletch, 2.5 degrees, which is on there. And then that's also on the instructions on it as well. But so, and then good.
So this has just come out, and obviously, they're selling like wildfire, and you're trying to get up to capacity. How are you looking ahead to what's next, or what can you do different? Like, I don't know if, I'm sure the size is optimized for what you want to do. So I don't know if longer, shorter, what are you thinking looking ahead for the Super Sabre?
So, like I said, I don't look at it as making like a vane for this specific thing, this specific thing, and this specific thing, and this specific thing, because I've run the numbers, and the drag or whatever you get with a much lower profile vane, it doesn't exist. It's not worth it. And, that's looking at the computational fluid dynamics, that's looking at the stability program, and that's shooting with the lab radar. The lab radar is really giving me a lot more information on that as far as drag goes, and the deceleration of the arrow as it gets to the target. I do have more ideas for vanes though. So there's not everybody could shoot the higher profile vanes, and these vanes they're just as tall as a Blazer or a Max Hunter, so they're not crazy tall. But I know there's people that have clearance issues with different things.
Right.
So I know what the profile will look like, but I need to optimize it, and gotcha. It's going to take a couple weeks to do that. But not only that, but I have other projects that I'm working on and keeping up with the arrow builds and all that kind of stuff. So they're not going to come out for a while. I mean, I'm maybe next year at the very earliest. And then on top of that, getting the molder set up to be able to run it. And I need to get these going first, and then the dialed sight. So, I'm the lead engineer for the dialed sight as well.
Yes.
And, so I got other things in the fire right now. And then the other thing is the colors. So I build 90% of my builds are with white vanes. And then, so I was like, let's get white first. I'll be coming out with orange and green and black as well. Fluorescent
Gotcha.
Orange and green, and then black. But again, that's down the road. I need to get a quantity of white first, and then we can look at colored vanes.
Before I ask you about dialed, I have to ask, I'm listening to all the time that you spent on the vanes. How do you have time for your real job?
That's a good question. This started out as a hobby, and then it just snowballed. And then with the vane, it's more of just, there's guys that like to go out and drink with their friends and watch football and that kind of stuff. I don't. I mean, like literally, if I'm stable and not moving for 20 minutes, I'm thinking about archery, and I'm thinking about, right now it's a lot more of the mechanics of the arrow, because I learned probably 3 or 4 really big things designing these, and I feel comfortable with the vanes now. Now I'm looking at the actual mechanics of the arrow during launch, how that force is affected, and et cetera on that situation. But just diving into it and understanding it. Like I said, the aerodynamics are super complicated. The physics behind an arrow launch is extremely complicated.
Yeah. And
I'm actually I talked to 2 physicists, and I'm talking to another one tomorrow, just to bounce ideas off of them. And these are guys that are, PhD physicists that, I messaged, and I was like, hey, how you doing? Just really buttering them up, but they're interested in it. And once even my friends that are at my day job that are mechanical engineers, they think I just go out and shoot arrows, which when it comes down to it, you are. But there's a deeper level to it, and I just love being, all the way down into that and getting into that. And once you describe some of the physics of it, then you really get some people's ear that are very interested in physics and just the engineering behind it. It's crazy complicated. I mean, like the stuff I've talked about today is the tip of the iceberg, just tip of the iceberg.
When we've done high-speed videos of arrows coming off the bow, and when you see that thing, that it ever ends up where you want it to me is just a miracle. Seeing everything that arrow does, everything the vanes do, the fletchings, I mean, it seems like it's a miracle that it goes where you want it to.
It really is, man. I mean, and when you just the forces involved in that launch and how much it bends and all that stuff is crazy. But also think about, now look at your bow, and I don't look at bows much. I mean, I'm focused on the arrow.
Right.
I gotta limit myself somewhere. But you have the string and the cam timing and the string angle and the rest timing and blah 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 blah. All the variables associated with that bow.
Yeah. Basically
like a guitar, and so it has to be perfectly tuned. And if it's not, you still want good results. And it's amazing how accurate you could be with a bow. That's one of the things that, like when I'm talking to my friends that aren't archers, and they find out that I do this, and, you know, I end up working into every single conversation that I have. But the talking to them about that and then telling them, you know, yeah, you could have groups of, you know, 8 inches at 100 yards. I mean, you have to be good, but it's definitely possible. Well, it's not out of the realm.
We just come out of the tournament in Redding, California this past weekend.
Yeah.
140 arrows shot from 2 yards to 101, and the winner dropped 2 points.
Yeah.
Of 140 arrows, he missed the bullseye twice.
I can't believe that. I mean, it's just, like you said, it's just, it doesn't make sense. If you just put all that, if I could just download all the information, put it on a piece of paper and give it to somebody and say, and give them exactly what you just said, they would say that is not possible. But yeah, not only the variables in the bow, the variables in the arrow, but also you anchor every single time in the exact same spot. Your peep is perfectly in line with your scope.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. It's just, it's
elevation, wind, humidity out there. You know, they all talk about the guys from the East Coast who go out. They have to re-sight in because the humidity is different. I mean, just crazy.
It was interesting because one of the guys that I built for a while ago is actually a sniper. And I've done that a few times where guys, they're in the Army and they get out of the Army and they pick up archery, they pick up bow hunting. And so I was talking to this guy and he's like, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm shooting, you know, about 6-inch groups at 60 yards. And I was like, that's pretty good, man. You know why? You seem to have something worked out. And he just kept going, I think I could shoot better than that. And so finally he told me, I mean, he didn't want to tell me what he had done in the past, but he doesn't want me to use his name, but he's been in a couple books and he's been in a couple articles.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I was like, oh, yeah, let's work on that. He should be stacking arrows at 60. And we started talking about ballistics and he was like, you know, he has a confirmed kill at over a mile. And so it was like, you know, it's like when I shoot that far, it's like I think about the pavement or the color of is it sand? Is it asphalt? Is it concrete? Because the heat rises differently. And I have to think about that and the rotation of the earth and obviously the breathing and heartbeat you've thought about and all that stuff. But it's like, not only that, but the timing of a person, you know, coming by a window or something like that, or how long will they be there? How long will it take the bolt to get there? And I'm just like, dude, let's build I can't wait to build some arrows for you. And so we did. We went through the whole process and, you know, I went through all my calculations and talked to him quite a bit about things. And then, he said he was able to, not consistently, but he could shoot a 3-inch group at 100 yards. And, you know, that's a bold statement and I understand that. But this guy with his background, I was like, that's awesome. It was just so fun to do that.
If somebody, it's going to get in his head that he ought to be able to put it in the same spot every time, it's going to be a guy like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So tell us about Dialed. You held up the site there, and we know we're bringing those in soon. Tell us about that site because it's definitely unique, and we're excited about it.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of the story how I got involved. But my buddy TJ, the same guy that got me into archery, he's the guy that comes by, drops something in my ear and then leaves, and then it just eats away at me for, you know, years until I do it. And when I first got into archery, that was the first thing that we talked about. I'm a mechanical engineer, he's an industrial engineer, but he's a lot of a mechanical engineer. And so we'd always talked about that. When I got mine, I was like, this sight, it could be better this way and that way. And he was like, yeah, I have a sight, it could be better this way and that way. And so we talked about it, but at the time, you know, neither one of us had companies or anything like that and didn't have the connections to be able to do it. And just, you know, at the range, how you talk with your friends. And so that was in the past. And now, you know, I've been building arrows for 4 years ish. And he has a company called Rack Hub and Half Rack. And so they've been doing things like that. And now we have connections and we knew people and like Taylor Coleman and Scott and Jordan and all those guys had gotten together and we're going to make a site. So they knew TJ, they talked to TJ about this idea, and TJ was like, I have an idea for what it could look like that would be revolutionary. And so the outside of it was like TJ coming up, you know, just out of his head. And then he called me and told me that, and he said, hey, I got an idea, you know, I've been working with these guys. would it be something you'd be interested in taking a look at? And I said, yeah, I'll look at it. And he was like, well, it might be a couple hours. And I was like, that's fine. I'm interested. I'll look at it for you and give you my feedback. And he said, well, might be a little more than that. We might need to talk about like how much you want to do it. And I was like, come on, dude, we've been friends forever. I don't need this. And he's like, well, I feel better about it. So we did that. And, now I'm the lead engineer on it. So it progressed very quickly to that. Really, really quickly, more than I thought it was going to do. But it's a great site. There's a lot that, we actually designed most of it in a Starbucks in Kokomo, Indiana. We would just go in there and we had just a bunch of competitor sites. And there were definite things that we didn't like. I mean, we don't like a site to have a bunch of knobs and everything hanging off of it. And, it just too much like a telescope is what I tell people. And that was kind of a big concern of just keep it simple and keep it easy to use, but super accurate and new. We want something that looks new. And that's just the way he designs things anyway. So we actually sat down and we were like going through sites and we were like, yeah, I don't like this, this, and this. Mainly what we did was just decide what we hated and then did what we wanted to do. So on this one, it obviously has the void in the middle of it. That's just kind of its trademark look, and it has a slanted rail to it. So the idea on the slanted rail is that as you're further out, you're closer, and then as you dial it back in, your sight will actually get closer to your peep. So it'll allow you to shoot further yardages, but you'll still have the advantage of having a slightly longer sight radius for closer shots. And like when I'm designing or working with people on arrows, everybody wants to shoot further. We're not encouraging people to take longer shots on animals, but if you shoot 100 yards and then a lot, and then you go shoot 20 yards, it'll be crazy how accurate you are.
Yeah.
Getting out there and doing that, plus you have the Total Archery Challenge events where people are shooting over 100 yards. And so they're like, everybody wants to shoot further. And that was just a good way to do it.
It's the other just thing fun.
Yeah, exactly.
To shoot farther.
Yeah. And if you're scared to do it, a good way to do it is shoot 20, get dialed in, shoot 30, work your way out to 100.
Yeah.
It'll surprise you how good you are at that range. You're going to lose arrows, but who cares, man? Have fun. That's right. But so with this one, we have on the site itself, there's a pin that's at the top in the center, like everybody else has.
Yeah.
And then there's a lower pin.
I see that.
And this pin is, the Stub XR pin. It's a lot lower than most sites have because we moved the bubble to the top instead of at the bottom. Because when you're shooting at an animal, if you're kind of looking at the animal back there in my picture, if you have a bubble down there, it's covering up most of the sight picture and what you kind of want to see.
Right.
But when you remove that, you get a much clearer sight picture. So we put it up at the top. And as you're drawing, you could still see it just out of your peripheral. And as I draw, that's what I look at as the level. And then as I get down, I'm leveled and I'm ready to go. And I don't care about the level at that point. I don't want to see it. So it's still there where you can see it, but it's out of the way. Plus it gives you a clearer picture on your target. Like I said, you don't really care what's going on up here, but you do down here because that's where the animal could be. Not only that, but then that allowed us to put the last fiber optic pin really low, and you can again shoot further than you used to be able to. So, it'll help you with your closer range shots, and then also let you, go out, sling some nocturnals at twilight and have a good time doing it.
What's the time frame on that? I know it's Steve was saying like this summer.
Yeah, that's summer is what we're looking for. I'm doing the engineering side of it, so I'm just nose to the grindstone on that, and I'm letting Scott and Taylor and those guys work on the timing of it. But summer is what we've been focused on right now.
Gotcha. Kyle, tell us about the DCA Vane angle tool as well. I know we've done some videos on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So what I did was, like when I'm building, I just have a short section again, but when I'm building, my vanes are all at 2.5 degrees, and that's what I recommend for the sabers. It says 2.5 degrees on the back of it. And one of the guys that I build for was like, how do you know it's 2.5 degrees? And I was like, well, I print custom wraps for everything I do. So like when you buy arrows from me, you get a custom wrap. This one is a DCA one, but I also have, like these are my arrows for this year. I kind of go nuts on mine if I can.
Nice.
And these are actually kind of the livery from the Thunderbirds, the Air Force fighting Air Force flight thing. So I did these, and I'll probably have those on my website as well, but everything comes with a custom wrap. And so what I did was I made a custom wrap for myself that has a center line mark on it, and then it has angles coming off of that. And then so there's a center line that runs down through it, and then there's angles that step out from that. And so that allows you to line up a Bitzenberger jig so that that's exactly, 2.5 degrees or whatever you want. It goes out to 6, but you can't get there. It's impossible. So this one is, it's actually on Lancaster, and then it's on my website as well. But this is great because if you don't want to do 2.5 degrees and you love to tinker with things, which is the majority of our audience, you could try 1 degree, you could try 1.5 degrees, you could try whatever you want, and you know exactly what you're doing. So, with the Bitzenberger, it doesn't have an angle on it. You kind of just guess a little more, a little less. But with this, it's repeatable. The other good thing is, like I said, I had some other guys that actually fletch for me. This is our master one. And so it's already tuned to the offset, and I could set up, 100 Bitzenberger jigs exactly the same.
Right.
With this tool. So
which if you have the Bitzenberger, folks who've been using them for years, guaranteed if they're, if that's what they like to have, that repeatability, there's etches in the jig. They've just scored a line so they can always get to that point. But obviously, it'd be difficult to have that many if you like changing it. Whereas this, I know I've seen that. We put that in the Bitzenberger, and you can just set it, put that in there, set it, and then you're good to go.
Yep. And like I said, you can tinker, you can play with it. And I've had multiple shops, actually other quote unquote custom arrow builders, compliment me on it and send me messages and, hey, we love this. This is awesome. And same thing with the Vanes. Other custom arrow builders are picking those up and using them. And so, it's good for the community, I think. So, with the dialed guys, with dialed archery, and with my products and some of the other stuff that's coming out, I think that there's a new realm that's coming in that will kind of spice up archery, bring in the next, not only from a design standpoint, but also from, the detail that goes into it, like all the time I spend on the Vanes and everything. I think that that's hitting now. You have a lot more repeatability, and the bows are a lot better. The arrow shafts are a lot better, more consistent. The manufacturing process is catching up to kind of the technology that's available to develop things, like the Vanes. So it's an exciting time.
All right, Kyle Davidson, well, we certainly appreciate your time and your knowledge and explaining. I can tell you, for me personally, I would have never thought that much thought would go into something as simple as a vane there. Educated, learn something new every day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I really appreciate what yourself, with all your knowledge and all the videos you've done, and Lancaster in general, with all the support they give archery and everything like that. It's just amazing. It's great to have a company like that that's helping everybody out.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Yep. Folks, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click that bell to get notifications whenever we put out new videos. And as always, if you have any questions, you can visit us at lancasterarchery.com.